I'm inside the coach's room. I'm Steve Peters. You can just call me Petey. We're getting 2 weeks away from the NHL playoffs. A lot going on as the season is wrapping up, and there's teams that are fighting to get in. There's teams that are looking at their matchups and who they're going to play and starting to pre-scout and get ready for the day that playoffs arrive. But there's a lot of teams that aren't. And there's teams that are looking at, oh my goodness, how did we do this season? And did we get better? And did we improve? And are we in a rebuild? And what the hell are we doing? I know because I've been there. Uh, I used to be the video coach of the Arizona Coyotes for over 20 years inside the coach's room. And I've been there as the rebuilds tried to occur. And the first topic we're going to have is the rebuilds again, because I think it's important this time of year to take a look, especially your team. If your team's in a rebuild, are they doing the right things? And the one thing about rebuilds, and I talked to Bill Armstrong last week on the show, and the hardest thing for general managers and teams and owners and franchises to do is stick with a rebuild. It's incredibly hard. The pressure from the fan base, the pressure from ownership, they get a change in management, or you get a change in coach, or you get players that just get tired of it. And you need to make changes, and it's hard. And you get to a point where you want to win, and you're tired of losing, and tired of losing bad. Because if you're going to rebuild, you need to lose bad. I.e. Pittsburgh getting first back to back, and Chicago struggling for years to get high draft picks. We've gone through those kind of scenarios before, but you got to be bad for a while. And I think when you look at Chicago Blackhawks, you get Connor Bedard, and you go, oh my goodness, the rebuild is well underway, and here we go. That we're on our way to becoming a playoff worthy team, but you're not. You're not. It's another year of misery, and it's another year of being bad. The good news for Chicago is they're going to get another high pick, and you're going to add to an already stocked team of young players that are finally getting a taste of play this year after they made some changes. You're getting young players getting an opportunity to play, and I think that's important in a rebuild, especially in these games that really don't matter. Get those young players an opportunity to play and get used to the speed and the tempo of the game. You don't want to get so involved in these young players that you get used to losing. Check circa Edmonton Oilers when you stunk and you still had 5 first-round draft picks, and losing became a way of life, and it was okay to lose, and it became more about how are my stats than how are the team stats, and I think that became a problem at Edmonton. So you don't want to become that either. So we're talking about rebuilds for a little bit, and I want to talk about coaching and what's going on with the coaches and John Tortorella leaving Philadelphia. And hey, first of all, I'm not a reporter. I've said that many times. I'm not on the phone digging deep into these stories. This is just my thoughts on coaches in the National Hockey League and how important it is to have a coach right now in 2025 that at least you can get along with and at least you can communicate with. But I tell you what, in the late 90s, it didn't matter. It didn't matter. If your coach was a jerk, it didn't matter. If your coach was tough, it didn't matter. If you liked your coach, you know what? It didn't matter, because if you didn't like him, you were going, not the coach. The coach had the power in the franchise back in the late 90s, early 2000s. That shifted. The power is completely with the players now. The players can have their year-end meetings and say, I don't like it. I'm done. Trade me. Get me out. I'm done. Get your agent to put pressure on it. So I do think the players have much more power than they had then, much more. And their ability to make changes at the level of coaching, I think, is higher than it's ever been, because I think the players do have a voice, and I think it does matter. And I do think now in 2025, just like raising kids, you don't raise the kids the same way you did when you're 50. You need to teach these kids, today's kids, differently. They learn differently. Everybody grew up on cell phones and laptops. You learn different. You learn visually. You don't learn from getting yelled at. And is it the stick or the carrot? And I think that's changed. So we're going to talk about coaches for a bit. And I do want to talk about the playoff matchups, because they're getting so close. And one, I want to look at what they look like today, what they could look like in 2 weeks. And is it time to get rid of the current wildcard matchups? Is it time to go back to 1 to 8? Just a hint. My answer is yes. I remember it used to be 1 through 16. Like, you gotta go way back to get 1 through 16. The travel was horrific, but I made it a little more fair. Right now, I think it's time to change. I think what we're going to see in this playoffs is we're going to see too many really, really, really good teams out in the first round. And I know you got to get all the way and you got to beat everybody to get to the Stanley Cup. And I know that's really important. But I do think that it's time to at least look at it. So we're going to see what that looks like. But I want to start with the rebuild. And I want to talk with 4 teams in each division that are currently in the rebuild phase. And I think there's teams that are going to be joining them soon. Pittsburgh, get ready because I don't know what the hell you're doing in Pittsburgh. I've talked about that before with what they're trying to build. It's hard to get young when you're getting old. And I think that's Pittsburgh in trouble. So I don't have them in this group. So let's take a look at what I put up on the screen for the rebuild in the Eastern Conference. And I took the last 3 seasons and today's points, literally from today. So I know that there is still room to grow there. You're looking at some teams have 10 or fewer games to still gain points in. And you got to put at the top of the list, you got to go to the Ottawa Senators. And the Ottawa Senators right now are the team that you go, okay, yeah, this team is doing it right. They're doing it young, with Stützle and you got but Kachuk and Drake Batherson and Shane Pinto. And this is a young team. And Jake Sanderson is young, and this team is trying to build from within and through the draft, and it's great. They picked up Philip Zetterlund. You've got some experienced players in there with David Perron and Claude Giroux towards the end of his deal, and you've got a team that you can see is improving. And I think when you look at them 2 years ago, 86, and they're going to surpass that this year. They're at 84 right now with 10 to go. They're going to surpass that. Last year at 78 points, and everybody kept saying, okay, it's Detroit, Buffalo, and Ottawa. When are they going to come out? Well, Ottawa came out. Ottawa's in. Ottawa's in the playoffs. They're in. We're not going to say there's a team that they're in. They're in the playoffs. So you start to look where they're at. Long term, the biggest concern that you keep hearing the rumors of Brady Tkachuk is going and his no trade kicks in next year. Dude, I mean, I don't know. I'm not in the room, but I'd be surprised. Like he's their captain. He's their future. Here's what they're building around. Why would you get a guy that you've got locked up through 27, 28 at a reasonable number of $8 million? Why would you get rid of him? Again, unless we go back to that, hey, I want to get out. And we're going to bring up that too when you talk about rebuilds. Hey, I want to get out phase. So I think when you look at the Ottawa Senators and what they've been able to do with the rebuild, I think they're on the right track. I think they're doing the right things. I think they're young. They're building from within. They're building a really good core, and they're improving gradually. And I do think the future in Ottawa can be bright. I think Travis Green he stepped in at the right time. They got the right coach at the right time, that he is a mix of that X's and O's guys that can have a relationship with players and really competitive guy that wants to win. So I think Ottawa, when you look at those numbers, you've got to be pleased if you're an Ottawa Senator fan that you see the progress. That's all you want to see is the progress and see them going in that right direction. And a Canadian team wants to be in the playoffs. The issue with Canadian teams is going to come down to finances. And can you financially compete with these teams when you're looking at free agents? Do they want to go to Canada with the tax situation right now? Florida's a little nicer than Ottawa in the middle of winter. Sorry, it just is. And ask Matthew Tkachuk about that. And does Brady want to be with Matthew? And now that you're signed, your no trade kicks in. So we'll see. I think they will do everything they can to keep Brady Tkachuk there. And I think that this is a young core that's going to try to win as they are now. So let's continue on to the Montreal Canadiens. There's a team I thought I am surprised that they were able to get where they are right now. And again, build through the draft, build young. You look at that top line of Caulfield, Suzuki, and Slavkovsky. What a year that line is having. This team is young there, and Fast Patrick Laine is looking like he's happy. And it's another team when you look at what they're doing financially. He's got these guys locked up again through next year. You got Nick Suzuki through 27-28, Caulfield through 27-28. Had really good numbers. When you sign him at 7-8, you go, oh goodness, 7-8. They got him 7-8 through 27-28. Dude, that's a long time from now. And those numbers are going to be great as the salary cap continues to rise. This is a really good. And Sam Montembeault at 3-1 through 26-27. You got him this plus 2 more. Unfortunately, still have Carey Price on the books, but that's only 1 more year of Carey Price. And then that's when you get those kind of numbers off the books at 10.5, then you could go, okay, now they're ready to have another burst. So look for this team to have another push in 26-27 when they get some of that money off of their cap. But this is a team that plays fast. They believe in their coach. The coach is another guy that's incredibly competitive, has won, wants to win. And you look at that young defensive core. Defense is when you come into the league, it's easier to start as a forward than it is a defenseman. because as a forward, you just jump over the boards and you go. As a defenseman, it's so much harder. The reads, the ability to play physical in the corners, all the things you have to do as a defenseman takes you longer to develop. So I think Montreal's future, again, looks bright, and I think they're on the right track in the rebuild. And this is a team that can make the playoffs this year. So you're looking at two teams that are rebuilding, and they're looking to make the playoffs this year. Huge steps for Ottawa and for Montreal. Which brings us to our next team, the Yzer plan. You look at 22-23, 80 points. Last season, 91 points out of the playoffs on the last day of the year. 91 points a year ago. They got 75 right now. Now, can they get up to 80, low 80s? I think they can. But is this the progress that you wanted to see as a Detroit Red Wing fan? Is this the direction? Are they going the right direction? You have to make the coaching change midway. And I think Tom McClellan did a really good job. And I think it was a little firmer hand. But Tom McClellan can communicate. Players like Tom McClellan, but he's competitive and he wants to win. And can he be hard? Yeah, of course he can. But I think he's got that mix that I think you need, especially for a team that's trying to do what they're trying to do in the stage of the rebuild that Detroit's in. I think the Tom McClellan move has been very good. I still think when you look at this team, they can play fast. You got the young players, you got Casper, you got Raymond. Raymond's unreal. Like Lucas Raymond, you look at what he's doing for this team right now at his age. He's a guy that's going to continue to grow with this team. Larkin, you got 8.7 through 27, 28. Lucas Raymond at $8 million through 27, 28. Key players, DeBrincat, you've got locked up this plus 2 more. Some key role players, Andrew Kopp, JD Compher, guys that are going to need to be role players for this team, I think are there. I think there's some guys that have underperformed this year. I think Vladimir Tarasenko is one of them. Patrick Kane is up at the end of the year. Do they re-sign him? He's in at $4 million. He's had another good year that helped provide offense. But when is the Yzer plan kicking into the point where they're making the playoffs? And I think the frustration level for Wings fans is they're sitting another year in Little Caesars Arena without a playoffs. Another year. They haven't had a playoffs in the Little Caesars Arena yet for the team that was perennially not only in the playoffs. This was a team that was competing for a Stanley Cup year after year after year after year. And there were years that team was so dangerous. The Arizona Coyotes had to play them twice during the Datsuk Zetterberg years, but nightmare, had no chance. Lidstrom, and that was tough. Those teams are so good, and now you get to a team that not only is not in the playoffs year after year, you're not sure where you're going to be a year from now. I think the Yzer plan needs one full year with Todd McClellan, but at some point, Detroit Red Wings fans are going to have to look and go, okay, the Yzer plan might not be the plan. They have to win. And I thought this was the year that they had to win. I thought this was the year that they had to make the playoffs. I really did. I thought this was the year, and they're not going to make the playoffs. And I know there's a chance, and yes, they can still get in, but it's not likely. They're not looking to be a team that's going to make the playoffs this season. So where is the Yzer plan? And then we have to go to the last team on the list. And for Sean DePaz and Buffalo Sabres fans, 2 years ago, 91 points. Last year, 84 points. This year, sitting at 70. This team stinks. This is a bad hockey team. And unfortunately for Buffalo Sabres fans, I'm not sure what direction they're going. I don't know what they're doing there because you continually trade. This is what I'm talking about. Where are you at in a rebuild? And where Arizona would get to a rebuild and then you'd make a change. That's what Buffalo does. Draft really good young players, man, then you trade them. So I'm not sure what direction you go in. So here's people aren't going to like to hear this. Maybe they will. It's time to make a change in Buffalo. Buffalo has to make a change. You've got Tage Thompson, young, skilled. JJ Peterka, young, skilled. You've got these guys that can still play. Alex Tuck wants to be there, wants to compete, wants to put in the effort. The decor at the back end with Darlene and Owen Power and Bo Byram now on the back end. You've got a back end that can still grow with you for years. You got guys that really want to compete. They want to win. But they need a pathway. They need a blueprint. They need a plan on how to get from where they're at today to how they're going to get to winning. Jason Zucker is a nice player, and he's a role player. He's there for this plus 2 more. Jordan Greenway hasn't played to the expectations, a physical guy that can play a role player up and down your lineup, and he's this plus 2 more. So you've got these core players for a long time, Darlene, Power, and on the back end for 3, this plus 3. Like, you've got the core. Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen's locked up. This is a team that needs to be better, and I think they need to start with some changes, and I think it's gonna start it should start at the top. I think you really have to look at Kevin Adams, a former Arizona Coyote, Kevin Adams. I think you have to look at Kevin Adams and go, "It's time for a change." I think it's time to see somebody that's had more experience at this job, somebody that's been able to show at least an ability to build a team that can be a playoff-bound team, and lastly, I talked about it before with Buffalo and their coaching decisions. Lindy Ruff was a great coach, was a great coach. I'm not sure he can communicate with these young players today, which will eventually lead us into our next topic is how coaches communicate with players. And I'm not sure Lindy Ruff's the guy to do it. Buffalo needs to make changes. So look for the Buffalo Sabres to either A, make changes in the coaching staff or most importantly, management. But it goes back to the biggest problem is ownership. Saw it here in Arizona. You can do all you want if the owner isn't committed to winning and spending money and staying the hell out of the way. The problem in Buffalo has been hands-on ownership for years, and it's difficult for managers to do their job when the owners are pulling the strings. And you want your owner involved to the point that they bring the checkbook to the rink. And beyond that, the more involved those ownership groups get, the more difficult it is to do their jobs. So I think you've heard a lot of the rumors in Buffalo about how invested to day-to-day operations that ownership can be, whether it's in hockey or in the business side, and that can affect a team. It can. Let the hockey people run the hockey side. Owners can be involved and root and be happy. And hey, can we get this guy in a trade? It's going to cost us X. Well, no, we can't. We don't have the money to do that. Okay, great. Understood. And go back to the Arizona Coyotes' most successful seasons when the league owned the team. When was the league owned team? Because Don Malone had a budget. You stay within the budget. If you want to make a trade, he still had to get approval through the league. We want to do this. And the league didn't look at it from a hockey standpoint. They weren't hands-on in hockey at all. It was a financial thing. You have this much amount of money to spend, and here's what you're allowed to spend, and either spend it or you don't. And I think that's one of the problems that they have in Buffalo. And until they get past that, they're going to have issues. So I do think it's time for a little bit of shakeup, and I do think if you're a Buffalo Sabres fan, you have to be frustrated in the way that the rebuild is going. So to recap the rebuild in the East, I think Ottawa and Montreal are on track. Detroit's got a year. They got to fix it next year. They got to fix it next year, or there has to be some kind of change in the management. You've changed coaches. You've tried that, and we know the eyes are playing on several coaches now. So it's time. They got to get into the playoffs next year, or we got to be talking about the Detroit Red Wings on the last day of the season being close. And right now they're not. So let's go to the West. Let's go to the Western Conference, and we'll start off with a franchise I know a little bit better than the others, and that's Utah/Arizona. And if you want to sit there and tell me this is an expansion team, you can change the channels for now because as of the rest of this show, I'm going to talk about Utah as if it were going through the end of the Arizona rebuild. Because let's face it, that's what it's doing. And when you look at what they've done since 22-23, the Utah Hockey Club in 22-23 was 70 points. Last year, 77 points. This year, in 24-25, currently sitting with 80 points. And this is a team that can still finish in the mid to high 80s in points. So again, you're talking about a 10-point increase over this year from the previous year, 7 points from the year before that, a huge jump the year before that. This is a team that's in a rebuild. And this is when I talk about Bill Armstrong and his ability to stay with a rebuild and stay with a program. He had an ownership group that allowed him to do that. He had a consistent ownership group in Arizona, whether they were good or bad. We clearly could talk about on another show, but they stayed the same. They didn't change ownership groups, so he was there. And the plan for Alex Morello was easy to stay with a rebuild because it was cheaper. So it was easy for him to stay on that path of a rebuild. Bill Armstrong understood you needed to build through the draft, and he accumulated draft picks and assets. Now this team sits at 80 points, playing meaningful games late into the season, growing the right way, but they have an incredibly talented young core. And when you talk about what this team has for the future, and you look at Logan Cooley, Clayton Keller's only 26, Dylan Gunther, Barrett Hayton's still a young player. And you could talk about Barrett Hayton all you want, but if Barrett Hayton is an everyday player playing, 17 to 20 minutes for your hockey club, making a difference, he is a successful draft pick. Everybody thinks you got picked so high, so you got to be a home run and you got to be leading the team in points. No, you don't. You just got to be an everyday player that plays the role you're supposed to play it well, and help your team win. Florida Panthers don't win a cup without a bottom six. Ask the Edmonton Oilers how important a bottom six is from last year to this year. I'm not saying Barrett Hayton's a bottom six, but he's a young player that's still Jack McBain, Josh Doan We're talking about so many young players on this team right now, and there's more coming. If you want to hear about that, go back and check last week's show on the guys that are all coming. So that's how you rebuild a team. And so when you look at what Utah has done and where they're at in the rebuild right now, this is a team that's going the right direction. And you go talk about their salaries and where they got these guys locked up. You got Clayton Keller through 27, 28. And that's huge. You're going to have to find a way to get Cooley locked up. I think he's going to be next. You got him. He's up at the end of next year, so you're going to have to get him signed, just like you were able to put the long-term deal up front for Gunther. So look for Utah to sign him, and I think the future is bright for Utah. I've talked about that before. I do think Utah is doing it the right way. I will say this. For Arizona Coyote fans, I am frustrated that the rebuild is happening somewhere else, that we're seeing the fruits of the labor of the rebuild that went through the draft and went through the trades and went through the free agency here in Arizona on the precipice of having success somewhere else. And it is frustrating and it is hard. I'm sorry, Arizona Coyote fans. I'm right there with you. It is hard to watch from Arizona and watch how well this team is playing and how they're succeeding. On the other hand, these are players that were drafted while they were here. So it is still part of our hockey community in Arizona. So it's okay to root for those players and having success, whether in Utah and growing their rebuild. But let's go to the Anaheim Ducks. 58, 59, 74. Here's the concern in Anaheim. And when I talk about Anaheim and their rebuild, you look at those facts and you go, oh my gosh, what a jump this year. What a great year for the Anaheim Ducks. Boy, howdy, they're on the right way to the rebuild. And they do have some young players. Troy Terry's still there. Leo Carlson's having a great year. Cutter Gauthier. You've Mason McTavish. Tevers Zegras has changed his role in the way he plays a little bit. You've got Dostal has been lights out in the back end, and their goaltending has been solid. And it looks like their rebuild is going in the right direction. I will say this, and I again, my opinion, concerned in Anaheim, because I think this is a little bit of a blip in the radar for their season this year. And a couple things to look at Anaheim is what happens over the summer to their management and their coaching. Because when you look at the athletic report from agents and who is the most difficult franchise to deal with, it's Anaheim. When you talk to the players about what coach they do not want to play for, it's Anaheim. I do think they're going to have a difficulty making that next step because of the way it looks with their coaches and the way their management is perceived. I think that's real. And I think that what you're going to get with Greg Cronin at the helm is you're going to have a tough time getting free agents. Free agents, hey, LA area is great. Anaheim, when they're winning, is great. The building, I mean, the facilities, it's time. A little upgrade in the arena, but you don't want to go play for a coach you don't like. You're not going to go. If you have a choice to go for somewhere where an atmosphere is painful, it's hard to go to practice every day. Guys are not happy. And I mean, the staff's not happy in the locker room. The players aren't happy. Management, Pat Verbeek can sit there and go, hey, look how many points we got. Yeah, I'm building a great franchise. But if nobody wants to be there, how great is it? And how is that group going to make the next step? And say what you want. It matters. It does matter. You think that John Cooper didn't have a good atmosphere for Tampa Bay, for their staff, for their players? Maurice in Florida, you don't think that's a good atmosphere to be involved in? And guys are happy to go to the rink every day. I know they're happy because they're winning, but you think it might be a little bit of a circle and one leads to the other. I think Anaheim's going to have a problem. I don't think they're going to take that next big step. I know they have a lot of young talent. I just don't think they're going to make that step. I don't think they're going to be able to attract the free agents that they want to attract. And I don't think they're going to get the big ticket players that are going to want to be there to help push this team over to the next level, because that's where Anaheim appears to be with the number of points they have this season. They want to make that next step. They want to get that little bit of push, and you can't get that push in a locker room that's full of black clouds. So Anaheim looks like they might be making it. Anaheim looks like they might be in the right direction. Anaheim looks like they might be on the verge of having that rebuild, but I am concerned on where they're going. And that leads us to Chicago. 59 points 2 years ago, 52, 51. They're going to get a few more points this year, and a few is a few. I mean, they're going to get a few more points, but they're about the same as they have been over the last few seasons. And when you talk about that with the Chicago Blackhawks, you get concerned. And I think it's that when you talk about the fan base in Chicago, they're concerned because when you look at what they have in their youth with Bedard and Nazar and Oliver Moore and Slaggert and Reichel, like this team is young. Rinzel in the back end, Vlasic, Kaiser, Levshinov. This is a young Kevin Korchinski. And you just bring in Knight. Like this team with Spencer Knight and Arvid Soderblom, who I think are a great young tandem. This is the team that, although they are where they are in the standings right now, this is a team that's trying to rebuild the right way. The big step for them next season, because they're going to get another good draft pick. But we've seen these young players, and they're going to have to develop. They need two things. Donato is a key. I think getting Donato back in to this lineup, a guy that can help drive the bus, help lead the team, help prepare the right way, help to do things that he knows how to be an NHL player, that he needs to teach his young guy how to pull the rope. And I think that was a huge, huge move. People are talking about trading him at the deadline, and I think that was huge that Chicago was able to save him. This next step is, what are they going to do behind the bench? And this is what's going to separate them from making a big jump, a little jump, or staying the same next year. I think it's imperative that they get the right guy behind the bench. And I talked to some people on a show in Chicago a few months ago, and I said the right guy's Todd McClellan. Well, fortunately, that ship has sailed. So you got to look at what's next. Somebody said John Tortorella. Are you out of your mind? John Tortorella does not want to coach young guys trying to develop into the league right now. So forget that. That's not the right guy. You're going to need an experienced coach that has been in the league, and he's going to have to walk the line that we've been talking about: relationship building, developing players, and have that ability to provide X's and O's and have that push where you can push guys to be their best. And that's why I kept going to Todd McClellan. I like Dean Evison. I thought Dean Evison would have been a great hire in Chicago as well. And you see what he's doing in Columbus, would have looked good in Chicago, man. I thought Dean Evison surprised when he left Minnesota. I think that was a big step. And where Columbus is right now is because of what they've got behind the bench. And I do think the coach matters in Columbus. And I do think the coach is going to be the next big decision in Chicago. And so you got to be careful that you don't overthink it. Is it time for a young guy? Is Carl ready to come from the University of Denver and join the NHL? Maybe. And the reason I say maybe is this might be an opportunity where a young coach can grow with young players, and he can come in at the right time and spend 2 years in Chicago working, developing, with expectations being low, and then become a winner. So I'm curious to see if they go that route, or if you go with some of the guys that are on the shelf. We're not going to get another guys that are out there and available right now. You know, Dave Haxtell, Dave Woodcroft. There are some guys out there that are looking to get back into the game. But I think you need to wait to see what happens in the coaching carousel at the end of the season, because there's going to be changes. So I think Chicago's biggest move in the offseason is going to be at the behind the bench and with their coach. And can they continue with what I think is going to be a great rebuild, even though the points don't show it? And I know fans are frustrated that it continues to spin and spin and spin, but it's coming. And I think this youthful exuberance and youthful talent just needs a sprinkling of veteran guys. And I mean real veterans. I don't mean guys that are veterans because they played in the league for a long time. I mean veterans that know how to play, and veterans that know how to do things the right way, and veterans that know how to compete. And I think that's the players. Those are the players that Chicago Blackhawks need to bring into the fold right now, are guys that want to compete. So that's what I look for Chicago. San Jose Sharks. Let's finish this off with the San Jose Sharks for the very last team that is in the rebuild. This team is struggling. Macklin Celebrini in his first year. Will Smith is still young. This is a young team, again, trying to get through the rebuild. Unfortunately, it's going to be a while. It's going to be a minute for your San Jose Sharks. 60 points 2 years ago, 47 last year, 50 right now. They'll finish in the low 50s, and they've got a long way to go. It's funny because you look back with the Joe Thornton, Pavelski, Nabokov era, and you go, my goodness, was this team good? This team was close to winning a Stanley Cup, competitive in the Western Finals year after year, and you go, oh my goodness, this team is so close. They are so far. Talk about their coach. I'm not sure this is a coach that's going to get him over the hump. I think he'll probably be safe in this offseason because this team is still so bad and so far away that I think he's probably safe. But I do think you're going to see a coaching change in San Jose in the next 2 seasons when this team finally starts to make the next step and going in the correct direction. They've got the young talent. Celebrini was a huge, huge asset for this team, but I don't know if this team is ready to win. And look for the San Jose Sharks to be at the bottom of the standings again for another year. I think Anaheim, if they can make a coaching change, and if they don't, look for Anaheim to take a step backwards. I think Chicago is going to take a step forward. I do. I think they're going to get the right coach behind the bench, and I think Utah is close to being a playoff team next year. So, of all the rebuilding teams, San Jose, you're the one that's got a ways to go. And we talked a lot about the coaches. And a lot of these rebuilds is because of the coaches. And I think coaches make a difference. And we talk about how big of a deal the coaches are. And I talk about Anaheim. I'm not in the room. I've been in the room. And I've been in the room when things are bad. And luckily for me, I've had the opportunity to work with a lot of really good coaches. And when a team is struggling, when a team is rebuilding, you need the right coach. You need a coach that wants to take little wins and is okay with, hey, our power play was better today, and that's good enough after you lose 7 straight. And so, a rebuilding coach is incredibly important, and that's why when you're seeing these coaching changes, like John Tortorella in Philadelphia, I like John Tortorella. I worked with him a few years in Arizona. I think he's a smart hockey guy. I think he's an incredibly good human being. And one of the nicest coaches I've ever worked with or for was John Tortorella. Off the ice, he's an incredibly caring person, and he's a great guy to be around. Philly needed a change. And we talked about what young players and their expectations of young players. Young players are different. Young players are different than they were 15, 20 years ago. They just are. When you used to get a rookie in the league, they were timid and had carry bags out to the bus and sat in the first row between the media and the players on the bus, and they had the worst seats and they went last in the meal lines. All of those things were true, and you could treat them a little bit differently. You can't anymore. Your young players, your rookies are your superstars. Your young players are your best players. Your 18, 19, 20-year-olds are the guys that your franchise is being built around. These are the guys you can't push around anymore. These guys you can't make unhappy anymore because guess what? They hold a lot of power because they make a lot of money and they're the face of the franchise. And they're the guy that go to their agent, they go to the management, they go to ownership and say, I'm not doing this anymore. And I think that's what we started to see a little bit in Philadelphia. It was time for a change in Philadelphia. It was. I think his voice, he set the groundwork in Philadelphia, but it was time. And you can see when the young players like Matvei Michkov and Cam York, we're curious to see how his career goes now that Tortorella is out of the way. It doesn't mean I don't think John Tortorella is a great coach, because I do. I mean, he's top 10 wins all time in the National Hockey League. Dude can coach. He's a very good hockey coach. Wins a Stanley Cup. You're a good coach. So I just wonder if his style of black and white, this is the way it is, it's my way, and I'm making future men. I don't feel he can take that anymore. I don't know if you can have these hard lines anymore. I don't know if that works anymore. And I'd like to think that it does, because if I'm an owner, that's the kind of coach I want. I want a kind of coach that, hey, if you mess up, you're going to sit out. You don't play well, you're going to sit down for a period. You don't follow the rules, this is the way it's going to be. I'm just not sure today's players respond that way. I'm not sure that's the way young players are going to develop. And I'm not sure that's the way you're going to get the best out of your young players. I do think there's got to be a form of discipline. I do think there has to be a set of rules. And when I said rules, it's not just, I don't mean curfews and that. I don't think that's important. But I mean rules on the ice. You're going to play this way. This is how this team is going to play. You play this way. If you don't play this way, then there's going to be consequences. I do think that's incredibly important. I don't think if you can't win if you don't have that. You can't, because then you're getting a chaotic team that doesn't know how to win, doesn't know their X's and O's, doesn't know where to go, and you're going to have a disaster on your hands because you don't know how to get these players to the next level. And I think there are coaches out there, surprisingly or not, to people that aren't great X's and O's guys. There's guys in the NHL that aren't the great guys, the great coaches at making changes into a game and strategizing what can I do to get out of this mess. And if you want to see who those coaches are, watch the playoffs. The teams that don't make changes from game after game, and hey, you can lose in the playoffs because your team is inferior. Absolutely. But trust me, I've been in those playoffs. You get blown out 4-0 or 4-1 because the team is so much better. CSAC Forsberg era Colorado, Datsuk Zetterberg, as I said before, Arizona played both of those teams at their heyday. So it's not always about coaching, but when the differences of those teams are close, coaching does make a difference. So I think you need to find that coach that has that ability to set rules on the ice, but they also have to be able to communicate with players and understand the players are going to make mistakes, and those consequences can't be as severe as what they are currently in the Philadelphia organization. And I do think that matters. It's not you're going to miss a shift. You're going to sit here after practice and work on this skill. You're going to sit a little bit longer in the video room with the assistant coaches learning this way to play. And then as those mistakes escalate and continue to happen, then of course, then the consequences need to continue to grow. Because if you don't have those consequences on how to play in the defensive zone system or a neutral zone system, then you're just going to have chaos on the ice. And you need to have that structure. So I do think that's important, but I do think that that's where the breed of coaches like John Cooper. John Cooper's a nice guy. Ask the guys in Tampa. He's a nice guy. Staff likes John Cooper. John Cooper's a good coach. Well, yeah, he wins. Has he sought out Nikita Kucherov? Absolutely, he has. He's benched him, not for a game. Doesn't publicly embarrass him and embarrass him in the media, but does he sit him out a few shifts? You bet he does. And you know what? Kucherov responds. He knows how to affect and how to approach different players differently. And I think that's one of the reasons he's having so much success there. You talk about Dean Evason, another guy that in Minnesota, another guy built relationships with his players, well liked, a good guy, players coach, but he's also a smart guy that pushes his players. And you're seeing it in Columbus. Columbus doesn't have the success without Dean Evason there. They just don't. And I think that's important to say. And that's why I think Anaheim's going to struggle, because you talk to people inside that organization on what Greg Cronin is like to be around. And it's tough, man. It's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough organization to win in until that changes. That's my opinion. And I'm waiting for the call because I'm sure Greg Cronin is dialed into my show. You saw there was a tweet out today on St. Louis and Boston and how they've gone since the coaching change. And Jim Montgomery, oh gosh, I'm not sure if he can coach. Dude can coach. Jim Montgomery can coach. And he's got the atmosphere in St. Louis, the way this team, they're playing and they're going. So when you go back to Boston overachieved. Boston was a team that performed better a year ago than their roster predicated that they should be performing. It just did. I didn't think the Boston Bruins, I thought they were on a downward slide last year and they overperformed. Well, this year you started to see what the roster really was and the weaknesses in their roster and their bad signings that they acquired. And now, is it the coach? I'm not sure Boston is having a coach problem. And Sacco will probably be back, and he's probably going to be the guy leading the bench, and they have a coaching problem? Probably not. Buffalo, I already said, needs to make a change. So that's where we got to get to, is who needs to make changes. I think Anders Sorensen's got to go in Chicago. Sorry, Anders. I think you've got a good job. The only thing that might save you is you've coached all these guys in the American League, and you might be the guy to grow with the team. You might be. You might be the guy to grow with the team. You might get a little bit longer leash. Nashville, what are they going to do in Nashville with Andrew Brunette? What are you doing in Peter Laviolette in the New York Rangers? Is Peter Laviolette the next John Tortorella? He's a guy that has that dark cloud, that pushes too hard, that is a guy that has a short shelf life as a coach, and that's why he jumps from team to team, because it works for a while and you can push the right buttons for only so long, and then the message gets really, really hard to hear. So is he next? I think that's another coach that's good, that they got to win, and they might make the playoffs, but this isn't a team that's going to have sustained playoff success. You look at the way this New York Rangers team is playing around, they're not going to have long-term success. So I think that's another one that needs to change. And the other one that's interesting in the Western Conference is Rick Tocchet. The contract troubles in Vancouver, coach of the year, could have locked him up early. The locker room's been an absolute disaster. Injuries have messed that room up. They're going to miss the playoffs again. And do you make a change, or do you lock them up? And the concern in Vancouver is they're going to lose them. And they're going to lose them because of finances. And they're not going to have an ownership group that's going to step up and sign long-term deal for Rick Tocchet, and he's going to leave. And when you've seen what Rick Tocchet's been able to do in Vancouver, locker room trouble aside, and I think that could have been handled better from all kinds of areas. I think that could have been resolved much earlier, much cleaner than it was. But here's where we are, and this team is out of the playoffs. What happens with Rick Tocchet? Vancouver fans, I'd love to hear what they think. I'd love to hear if they want Rick Tocchet back. Rick Tocchet is one of those guys. He's a no-nonsense, black and white guy. He's very competitive, works incredibly hard. And the one thing that people might not know, one, he's a really good X's and O's guy. better than I think people give him credit for or think that he is. He studies the game incredibly well. He wants to make changes to his X's and O's, but he's very particular on playing his system. You have to be disciplined and you have to be able to play that system. But he's also a guy that's willing to work one-on-one with players. And one of his assets was his ability to take players after practice. He'd be the last guy off the ice almost every day. Media people that were waiting to do interviews would get frustrated because he'd still be on the ice working on one-on-one skills. I remember him being on the ice in San Jose, pregame skate with Christian Fischer, and they stayed on the ice for an incredibly long time, getting pucks off the wall. Christian Fischer was having a tough time getting pucks off the wall on breakouts. And so Rick Tocchet was going through it over and over and over. Body position, stick position, where to look, how to stand, where do you go on the wall, how far can you go up or down the wall depending on where the defenseman is. All of those details, and Rick Tocchet loved it. That's what he wants to do. That's his greatest strength. And I hope it's continuing today. And I want to ask the Vancouver media if he's still one of the last guys off the ice, because he loves the one-on-one on the ice coaching. Loves it. He wants to compete. If he could play tomorrow, he would. There is no doubt in my mind. If he could put on his gear and go play tomorrow, he would. He's that competitive. But with the Philadelphia Flyer job open and the Vancouver Canucks not finishing up their contract negotiations with him, he's got 1 year left on an option, a club option next year. But they let him walk if Philadelphia throws a bunch of money at him. It's going to be an interesting one to watch when you talk about coaching staffs and where they're going to end up. I do think there are going to be a lot of coaches in the coaches carousel again this season. And I'll be curious to see if someone finally takes the step to bring in some of these college coaches. And I keep bringing up David Carl, successful guy, college coach. He's successful world junior coach. Is he the next Jim Montgomery? He's the next guy that's going to come out of college and be the guy that can help your hockey club. I'm curious to see if somebody's going to take a chance on him, or we're going to see the same coaches coming back and being recycled over and over again. So keep an eye on the coaching changes coming up, because they're coming quick. Because as soon as the hammer drops on the season, the hammer's going to drop in the coaches' room as well, especially for those that they think are underperforming. One other team to keep your eye on. This won't be popular in Canada, but what are they going to do in Edmonton? What happens when if Edmonton loses in the first round? 2 goals away from a Stanley Cup last year, and potentially out in the first round. They're going to have to travel to LA. LA is better than they were last year. LA did a great job at the trade deadline. LA is doing quietly built a pretty good team down there. And I'm not sure. They've got 4 losses at home for the entire season. I'm not sure if you're going to go and beat them 2 times in their own building. So what happens in Edmonton? Is Chris Knobloch the coach that everybody purports him to be from a year ago, when you have the 2 best players on the ice, you just throw out 1-2, 1-2, 1-2? I don't know. I guess we're going to find out, but I don't know if that maybe getting a little too thick into the weeds. I want to go one last thing I want to talk about before we go. I do want to talk about the playoffs, the playoff matchups, and where we stand right now statistically in the playoffs, and what's going to happen as these playoffs loom ever closer, and who is in, who is out. I know it's not as fun to go to statistics, but I think at this time of year, everybody goes statistics. And I'll tell you what, when I was inside a room, we would look at these statistical models on playoff projections every single day, every single morning. Who's in, who's out, what do the predictions say? I know it doesn't matter. You can go be the St. Louis Blues and win 10 in a row. You can. But I think in the East, when you go to the Eastern Conference, and you go, who's in? I think you've got 7 of the 8: Carolina, Tampa, Washington, Florida, Toronto, New Jersey, Ottawa in. They're in. Down to the final 3. 3 teams, 1 spot: Montreal, Columbus, New York. I think the Islanders are out. I think Detroit is out. I statistically, I go to Stathletes is my go-to. Thanks former GM John Tyka and his sister Megan for Stathletes. Columbus Blue Jackets are at 25.5% as of this morning. Montreal's at 51.7%. The New York Rangers at 19%. So Montreal right now, the fate's in their hands. It's up to them. Where are they going to finish in the season? But when you look at what's going on with Montreal, and you got to go look at their schedule, how are they finishing off the season? What do they have next? They got a light schedule coming up: Boston, Philadelphia, Nashville, and they've got a head-to-head with Detroit coming up. It's an important game. Those are their next 4. But then they got Ottawa, Toronto, Chicago again, and Carolina. 3 of the last 4 are really tough games. So it could look, by the time we get to April 10th and you're looking at the last week of the season, Montreal could be in. And you're going, oh my gosh, they're in. They got Toronto and Carolina in that last week. And Toronto needs to win those games. That Atlantic division, you got to win. Got to win. You don't want to go to Florida. You don't want to play Tampa in the first round. You want to win. You have to win that for Toronto. So I think it's going to be incredibly important. Columbus, same thing. Their gauntlet is now. Their gauntlet is this week. Colorado, Toronto, Ottawa. That's this week. They have 4 playoff teams, 2 on the road, 2 at home, and it starts Thursday night against Colorado Avalanche. These are tough teams. This is going to dictate their season. So when you wake up April 9th, a week from today, you're going to know where the Columbus Blue Jackets stand. If they can get through this gauntlet, Colorado, Toronto, Ottawa, if they can get through that gauntlet with 5 points, they're going to be okay. They got Buffalo, they got Philly, they got Islanders to close, and I think they're going to get points there. Columbus has to get through this week. The New York Rangers, it's a team I can't even believe is still in this thing. Can't believe it with the turmoil they've had in the locker room and what they've gone on when your GM calls you out and says, hey, this team stinks and we're going to get rid of you. If my boss told me that every day, it'd be tough to go to work. It'd be tough to really try to make money for my boss if I was going into the assembly line trying to do things right. So I'm surprised they're still in it. They've got Minnesota tonight. Minnesota's floundering. The Devils aren't what they are with the injuries that they have, and then they got Tampa Bay this week. They do finish off with a really tough schedule. They've got Carolina, Florida, Tampa. Their last 3 games of the season for the New York Rangers. And I do believe that all 3 of those teams are playing for something. Florida and Tampa have to win the Atlantic. You're going to get their best. Carolina getting ready for the playoffs in the last week. Rod Brandon is going to have that team ramped up. It's not close enough to the end where they can rest anybody. It's April 12th. You still got 5 days for the end of the season. So I think they're going to get their best. The New York Rangers finish hard. They finish hard where I look at Columbus and they don't. So Columbus has to get through this week. Montreal has to get through the middle, and New York Rangers have to get through the end. Who's standing? Gosh, I don't know. Yesterday I said it was the Montreal Canadiens. Today I think Columbus can do it. And tomorrow it might be the New York Rangers, but it's just that close in the Eastern Conference. And that's why I wonder when we start to look at the standings and what those matchups would look like if we didn't have to put Tampa and Florida and Toronto in the same division. What would those matchups look like? And I'm wondering if it's time to start thinking of getting those teams separated and to start thinking of, do we need to change back to the 1 plays 8 model in the playoffs? And I think it might be, because I think when you go to the Western Conference and you look at what's going on in the West and you look at the percentages of who's got the chance in the Western Conference, I think you're going to see that it's even more important that we start thinking about those changes of 1 to 8. Let's be honest. I think the West is set. Colorado, Vegas, Winnipeg, LA, Edmonton, Dallas, St. Louis, and Minnesota. Like Calgary, Vancouver, Utah, heck of a year, played meaningful games all the way up to the month of April. Great season, took strides, rebuilds in place. I think things are good. You've signed players at the trade deadline that you wanted to sign. You've got guys coming up, potentially Simashev and Boot coming over in the offseason to play in North America. Things are bright and shiny in Utah. It's just not going to be this year, not making the playoffs. Vancouver right now, according to Staffleets, has a 2.4% chance to make the playoffs. What? 2.4%? That's bleak. Calgary Flames 6.4. I do think if they had a little more runway, that I think Calgary could catch Minnesota. I think Minnesota, with their injuries and juxtaposed with their amazing start to the season, I think you might see them fall out, because Minnesota, they're a 500 team since the first 20 games. The problem with what we're seeing right now in the Western Conferences, you're going to have that matchup in the first round of the Dallas Stars and the Colorado Avalanche. Unless Dallas can put together, hey, they've won 6 in a row. If they can continue at this streak, maybe they can catch Winnipeg. But Winnipeg 7-3 in their last 10, and they're up by 4. That's going to be a tough order. Dallas wants to get out. They got to get away from Colorado. Dallas, Colorado is not a matchup that anybody other than fans want to see. And how many times does LA have to play Edmonton? I mean, that one's set. LA and Edmonton are set again. That we got to sit and watch that. So that's why when I look at the Western Conference, I want to propose that we go back to the 1 through 8 and what do those matchups look like right now. And I think this is probably how they're going to finish, or close to it. I think Winnipeg opens with Minnesota. I like Winnipeg in that series. I think Minnesota, even if Kaprizov comes back and Eriksson comes back, I don't know if they're going to be able to ramp up as quickly as they're going to need to be to play a series against a team that's rolling. So I got the Winnipeg Jets there. This the next the 2-7 matchup, Dallas, St. Louis. Yeah, I want to see that Jim Montgomery behind the bench in Dallas just a couple short years ago. Now behind the bench in St. Louis. Put your money where your mouth is, Dallas. Are you guys ready to win a cup? Because that's going to be a tough one. Nobody wants to play St. Louis right now. Nobody. Bennington's playing lights out. This team is rolling, and they're going to finish with the second wild card, and they're going to face somebody good, and they're going to knock somebody good out of the playoffs. But here's where you get some new matchups: Vegas and Edmonton, and Colorado and LA. At least we can get away from the Colorado Dallas, and I don't want to see LA Edmonton anymore. Colorado, LA, Vegas, and Edmonton. If this is an 8-game playoff, I want to see it. I want to see it right now. I want to see it this season. I think it's time to make an adjustment. I think it's time to go back to I know we were trying to build rivalries. I get it, but enough. Enough of seeing the same exact teams every season. It's reminiscent of having Calgary play Edmonton every season. It just gets frustrating, and it's hard to watch. I am excited to watch these playoff series matchup. I'm sorry to Vancouver fans and Calgary fans. I think the season's over. You can put a valiant effort and you'll put a fight in as this season winds up. I just don't think you're going to do it this year. I think the schedule is just not there to find enough points and enough wins to get you there. I think for Vancouver, with the middle of their schedule, they got Vegas, Dallas, Colorado coming up next week. Vegas, Dallas, Colorado. Dallas and Colorado on the road. When they get back from that trip after playing Dallas and Colorado, I think it might be over for Vancouver, and I don't think we'll be talking about them for the last week of this season. Calgary, you don't know. They've got Anaheim and Vegas. If they can somehow get a win against Vegas at home, then they got San Jose and Anaheim again. So you got Anaheim, San Jose, Anaheim, 3 of your next 4. They can still stick around for a bit. But Minnesota, you've got a big enough lead that you just got to coast through. You got San Jose, you've got Anaheim coming up. You've got Calgary and Anaheim on the road. You got to split that to get in. I still think Minnesota gets in. Calgary's out. It's going to be close. But that's the way the playoffs round up inside the coach's room. So what's going on inside the coach's room right now? Exactly what we're doing. Exactly what we're doing right now, talking about who's playing who's doing what's going on, who's playing where tonight and tomorrow. It's on a whiteboard. It's on there. It's all over their locker room. Trust me, that's all anybody's talking about. Do we still have a chance? And you're going to say it, because I know you're going to pour your cup of coffee in the morning, and Utah Hockey Club and Vancouver Canucks are looking at it going, gosh, this is going to be really hard. You won't say you're out, and you won't say you don't have a chance. You just won't. You won't. You're going to say you've got a chance. And you go inside your car and you put on the music. You go, we got no chance. We can't make the playoffs. Like, we can't. Like, I know the math. Like, I look at it. We have to win 9 in a row and hope this team goes 2-7. Well, it's not going to happen. So but you don't sit in the room. You can't go in with that attitude in the locker room every day, because this is the NHL. This is pro hockey. This is pro sports. You got to go in with the attitude we're going to win every single day. Even if you're out of it, you got to go in with the attitude we're going to win every day. And I know, because the Arizona Coyotes went into some of these seasons and some of these last few games going, we got to win, knowing full well that you need to lose those games so you had a better chance at Connor McDavid. And you still put up on the board, hey, we're going to win. Here's how we're going to win. Here's how we're going to prepare. Well, it's insane, because that's what you do. That's what you do inside the room. You win. You try to win every single day. It doesn't matter if you're on the top or you're on the bottom. You're trying to win every single day. And I hope over the next week to 2 weeks, and especially as the playoffs begin, one of the things we're going to do inside the coach's room is we're going to start showing what those teams are showing. Going to start showing what happens inside the coach's room as these teams are preparing for the playoffs. And even more importantly, after game 1, we're going to spend some time in the video. So make sure you're subscribing to Inside the Coach's Room on YouTube, so you don't miss the video content that's coming. Because I am going to treat this playoffs as if I was a video coach in the National Hockey League during these playoffs. And if my team lost, what would I be doing to prepare for game 2? And so we're going to see the actual kind of video preparation that's going to go through from game 1 to game 2 from a team's perspective. And curious to see if we can follow along and see what teams are doing, or what they can do, or what they should do. So make sure you go to YouTube and subscribe to Inside the Coach's Room. Leave me a like, give me a thumbs up. And you know what? Leave a comment. If there's something you want to see me break down, if you haven't seen my breakdowns, I'm an old video coach. That's what I do. I watch hockey all day long and I break down. You might not agree with me. You might not argue with me. Fine. Leave me a comment telling me I'm wrong. Please just go check it out and leave me a comment. Or more importantly, leave me a comment on something you'd like to see, some player you'd like to see broken down, some system you don't understand that you've heard talked about on your broadcast that you need to understand better. And I'd be glad to help try to figure it out and try to show you what that means. Because all I want us to do is educate hockey fans. The more educated fan is a more engaged fan. So if you know the game, you're going to watch the game. This game's given me a lot. I love the game. And I just want to make sure that people understand what they're watching. And it might help them watch a little bit more. And that's what we do inside the coach's room. We're a little bit we've got some interviews. We had Bill Armstrong last week. We got a coach coming up again next week. And I know we've had some retired coaches. I got a coach that's behind the bench right now in the National Hockey League and a team that's fighting for a Stanley Cup. A team that I'm really excited about talking about that I don't think gets enough attention, that I do think has a legitimate chance to win some games in this playoff season. I'm not going to give that name away yet because we know through scheduling things can go away, but stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to this if you're listening to it on your podcast because you don't want to miss these interviews as they come up. You don't want to miss what's going on inside the coach's room. I can't tell you how much I thank and appreciate anybody who's ever tuning in to listen to me banter and talk about hockey. I know that sometimes the passion and the love of this game that I have doesn't always translate through the camera, and I'm just glad and appreciate that you spent time in your day to listen to what I say about this game of hockey. So, for another wonderful day, getting closer to that playoffs, enjoy the rest of your day. Have fun. Make sure you subscribe. I'll see you inside the coach's room. I'm Petey, and we'll see you at the